So we're actually going to travel east because the world is round, contrary to some opinion. And we're going to travel east and then north to Maui in Hawaii, where we're going to meet Srimati Priya Devidasi. I'm very excited to hear her story. We have a story in common, so I don't want to steal her thunder, but she met the devotees in 1984. She found herself surrounded by devotees, even though she was brought up as a devout Christian. And she met Gurudeva in Badger, his second year in Badger, in 1997, and took Harinam and Diksha in the year 2000. Gurudev loved her cooking and really encouraged her to cook. And he stayed with her in 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, which is amazing to have Gurudev staying with you. And she loves doing home and public sankirtans with her husband, Chiranjib, and her family. So, Didi, sorry, I think we got the times a little mixed up, but no problem.
Yeah, I think that was my fault. I'm trying to do the conversions. Thank you, Syama Priya, for jumping on. So appreciate you.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me okay?
That matters. We can hear you really well, and I'm handing over to you, Didi. Warm welcome in Maui.
Everybody, pranams. I just need to correct one thing. Gurudev didn't actually stay in my home. He came to visit our home. He was staying in the Camp Pakusa in a little A-frame tent, and he wanted us to invite him to our home. But at the time, we had abandoned our home and run to Camp Pakusa for him, and so our home was a big mess. And we were like, oh no! But you know what it was? I think was that my husband had a promise from Srila Gurudev before he ever came to the West that he would come to our home. So I think Gurudev was like adamant to fulfill that promise that he said he would do. So we were in the, like 1 or 2 days into the camp, and Srila Gurudev approached me and he goes, I want you to invite me to your home. And I was like, oh God, I just felt so embarrassed, like number one, that he would have to ask me to invite him. And number two, that I was in no position to invite him to my home because it was a big mess. We had abandoned it. So I said, please, Gurudev, please come to our home. And he goes, very good, and then he made an arrangement to come. So, so when he came, I think he was, just coming, like when he came to Maui, the very first thing he said once everybody had spoken something and he did his pranams, he goes, I have come to Maui for Chiranjib Prabhu. And of course, my husband would just start weeping on the spot, like waterworks, like what, and everyone's like, what, we thought we invited him. And he said this every day of every evening talk. The first thing he would say, I have only come to Maui for Chiranjib Prabhu. But Chiranjib, you have to realize, is before Gurudev even came to the West, was already in correspondence with him through letters, through Prankishore Prabhu. And also, he just loved Srila Gurudev like immediately upon reading his transcripts that weren't even published yet, and just realized, who is this person? And just like, he loved him. And then so Srila Gurudev had said, I will come to your home. I will come to Maui. And we were like, oh, what a sweet sentiment. But we had no idea he was going to fulfill that thing. So, yeah. So when he came and he said that over and over, it was like he was reiterating, I've come here for you. And we just couldn't even embrace it. It was too much. It was just so glorious. So, and then on the second year that Srila Gurudev came here, the same thing. He came up on the, after the pranams and everything, and he said, I have only come to Maui for Chiranjib Prabhu. And Chiranjib would just curl into a ball again. It was very beautiful. But yeah, so at the first camp, the Camp Pakusa, when he first came, it was a very humble dwelling. Everybody had these little tiny Boy Scout 8 frames, and it was right on the ocean, literally just like 5 steps and you were at the ocean, and it was beautiful, clear blue water. And Srila Gurudev really liked this. He liked to bathe every morning, and my husband would take him out swimming. And then when he came back to camp, we were all completely blown away, and more devotees were coming from all over the world actually to this Camp Pakusa. We started out with like 25 devotees, and I think we must have ended with like 100 people there, but everyone was so fired up that people were coming out of the woodworks to meet this person and to feel that love and beautiful nurturing toward bhakti. So I had told Madhav Maharaj how grateful we were that they came, because we weren't the ones who invited him. Actually, Kedar Prabhu and Sarvabhauma tried to arrange it because they heard he was coming through. we just didn't think we had any facility or any hope of having him. And we had no money at the time. We were super broke. So when he arranged it, I was thanking Maharaja, I'm so glad you came. I don't know how to repay or anything. And he said, you know, Maharaja, so he's like, Gurudev has come only for Chiranjib. He turned out and walked away. I thought it was so sweet. So yeah, mind-boggling experiences here with Srila Gurudev, 4 years in a row. And we came to our home. I had made some muffins, and the muffins were, of course, on the restricted program of Gurudev's diet. Maharaja let me know, no, he can't have butter, he can't have sugar, he can't have, no. I'm like, well, let me just offer it. It was offered to Thakurji. I put it on the plate. So Srila Gurudev, while he was it was really personal and intimate that morning. And we were just in the living room. We had made an asana for him. We handed him this plate. He was popping raspberry in his mouth and looking all around and just talking with different devotees. It was very sweet and intimate. And then he was just handling the muffin, but I don't know. He's a mystical person and has great mystic abilities. At some point, he put the muffin down, and then we all said goodbye. And he walked around the property, and then he left. Everybody left, and Vishaka was still kind of lingering around. And we were honoring some of the prasadam. We were hoarding it, actually, and we weren't going to share it with too many people. And then she picked up the muffin, and she goes, "Look at this!" And the muffin had a hole in the bottom. It was completely empty, just a hollow muffin shell, so you could never tell that anyone had. And Gurudev had picked so much out of the muffin. He had such a reciprocal energy that, however desperate you wanted him to accept something, he would desperately show you that he did, In my experience, I've had that experience with him so many times, just so beautiful. So that's the muffin story. And then when he came to our home, it was just being around him, you were on a all different level of consciousness altogether, and you couldn't think about your mundane arrangements or anything. It was really difficult. And I'm a major multitasker, and I just got dropped out. Like, I don't know what to do. I made a plate. Everyone was helpful. And when Srila Gurudev came to our house, and so many devotees came, and we lived in like a real, suburban area. So suddenly there's like quite a few people on the lawn in pink clothes and white clothes, and the whole neighbors are like, "Oh, what's going on over there?" So it was really funny, but you just don't care. You're like, whatever happens, this is meant to be. We're fortunate. So Srila Gurudev coming to our house, and it was just every year he would say, "I'm coming to your house," and I'm like, "Okay, Gurudev," and we try to figure out when are we going to get up there, clean the place, make it nice. It was hard because I was also cooking for the camp and stuff, but yeah, Srila Gurudev came in a really radically important time in my life, where just like in the samsara prayers, when Krishna's mercy becomes thick, then Gurudev appears, And at that time I was suffering so much in an ISKCON style temple with our teacher at the time was, Grihasta, and he and his wife I don't think they were really handling having disciples and treating people properly in the right way. It was just all assumed that everyone was doing their duty. And there was really no affection in it. There was no affection. And when Srila Gurudev just was a personification of love and affection. So when he came to that temple, I think he came to the temple, and our teacher at the time decided to put up his Vyasa song next to Gurudev's Vyasa song, which was, it was kind of humiliating. And at this point in my life, I had lost so much faith, and I was so uninspired there, but I was still just doing my dry duty there and feeling like, where's the Shakti in all this? And how do we make advancement in this? And just, I was beating my head against the wall. I was so uninspired. And then when Srila Gurudev came, he came there. And when he saw the beautiful marble temple and the deities and everything, and he said, and this was Turia's big, like my teacher's big, pride and treasure was this big fancy ISKCON style in the middle of the jungle that he put up. And it was our everything, the deities and everything. You know how it is, an ISKCON kind of mentality about everything being more important than the devotee. The deities are more important than the devotee, everything like that. So when Srila Gurudev, he came, he saw, and he said, "This temple is very beautiful. So pukka, first class." And he said, "But if it's causing everyone misery and pain, trying to maintain, collecting so much money, everybody working so hard, I think you should burn it to the ground. Everybody freaked out, like, what? You know, like the people who were going to freaked out. And the rest of us like, yes, burn it down. Because every time they would go off to India, it would just be a drastic, you know, imposition on all of us to maintain the well, because the pump would always break. It was just like a nightmare. There was 1 or 2 devotees killing themselves on the main strip on the other side of the island making money. It was ridiculous. And we were no one inspired, really, you know? And so when Gurudev said that, and then Shamarani, Gurudev was asking Turiya Prabhu and all the other devotees, what were the 3 internal reasons for the descent of Srimad Mahaprabhu? And nobody could answer this question. And some tried, but they would get maybe one thing or the other. And you know how it's so tricky verbatim, that answer. So he finally asked Turiya Prabhu, and he was like, he kind of also didn't, I mean, this was my guru at the time, kind of didn't know. And he said, what are the 3 internal reasons for the descent of Mahaprabhu? And finally, he asked somebody to speak. I think Priya Prabhu said something, and other people said things. And then he finally said, okay, now Shamarani, you tell. So Shamarani stood up, verbatim, perfect explanation. And then while she was speaking, my teacher was mumbling to his wife. And he goes, you should listen to her. She knows more than you. And it was like, what? You know, what was just said? And so the impression Srila Gurudev made when he came here was very profound. And when he came to that temple, and in defense of my teacher, he was also just bewildered by Srila Gurudev's energy and potency. And then Gurudev took him around the property. Turiya took Gurudev around the property and showed him Radhakund, Shyamakund, all these beautiful things we had created there. And then Gurudev just turned around and he looked at him, he goes, you know, he was telling him, oh yes, I was the main pujari in Vrindavan at the Krishna Balaram Mandir for 2 years. He was kind of, you know, giving him his resume, you know, so to speak. And then Gurudev said, because you were so beautiful, that's why Krishna made you go there. You know, and he was like, what? And then he came to me, which was really awkward. He's like, what do you think he meant by that? And I think at that time, I think he was acknowledging this connection I had with this amazing person, that he was like, what did he mean? I go, what did he say? He said that because I was so beautiful, Krishna made me go to, or Prabhupada made me go to Vrindavan. I'm like, I think he sees your gopi bit, like he sees your gopi. And he was like, wow. And he like tripped out. And I was like, wow. Anyway, so then, you know, he came one more time. It was really awkward. And then after that, Turiya came to see him one time in the 4 times he came. And he brought his Vyasa song with him. So it was so gnarly. But one far out thing that happened was that we were doing the play of Srila Bhakti Brigade Keshav Maharaj getting lifted by that eagle, that Leela. And one devotee had this tiny baby. So she put the baby in the play and I played the eagle. So I had these big wings and like a bird mask. And I grabbed this baby. At that time, my ISKCON guru was sitting next to Gurudev. You know, so Gurudev would sometimes invite people, you sit here. And most of the people knew better than to sit there, but he didn't. So he's like, yes, we're on the same platform. So anyway, I came by with the baby. I grabbed the baby. I scooped the baby up and I come flying by Gurudev. And I see my teacher and Gurudev. And I'm like, I just look at Gurudev, you know, like I belong to you. And I flew away. And then Nirguna Prabhu had been sitting right next to Gurudev at that time. And Gurudev said, you know that bird? Very intelligent. So I felt like the Gurudev was, you know, he used to do that. He would give little secrets to people because he knew it would get back to somebody with even more, you know, verve than if he had said it, that beautiful thing that he did. So that time, my teacher was next to Gurudev and he said, so this Prabhu is very nice. You should honor and respect him like this. And he goes, is there any, and then Turiya said, tell them we're the same. And Gurudev said, what? And he's like, tell them we're the same. And Gurudev said, yes, same. And he got up and he left the podium because it was the end of class. Everybody followed Gurudev. Not one person stayed with Turiya. Everyone followed Gurudev. It was just so trippy that he said that, yes, same. And then everybody followed Gurudev. And I had these cookies that I had offered and I was passing them around. Gurudev had taken some before he left. And then Turiya said, he comes up to me, he goes, I heard they're talking about me. They're talking about me. And I said, yeah, well, they're just wondering why you don't come, why you haven't come to honor him. And it was shortly after that when I totally just gave up that Sangha and I left. And I had permission, but it was really begrudging permission and kind of a not very nice thing. And then I was, of course, rejected after that and condemned. So that's why I actually got Harinam and Diksha from Gurudeva again, because I had been cut off and condemned and everything. Basically, I felt I was just liberated and had been weeping so much to Krishna on the altar as a pujari. Help me out of here. Help me, find the nectar. And I really think that Radha Kunja Bihari at that time really answered my prayers. They brought me to the lotus feet of Srila Gurudeva and warmed my heart and stoked me up again. So yeah, pretty profound experiences on Maui. We had some really good fortune in Badger too. Somehow my father paid my way to go to Badger because he needed something done, some sewing work done. So I was going to see him and then go see Gurudeva. So I went to Badger first, and my husband was going too. I went to Badger, saw Srila Gurudeva in the famous blue room. This would be our second meeting. And I had this game I played with my father. Are you happy? He would say, are you happy? And I'd say, oh, yes, today I'm happy. And then when I get into that room with Gurudeva, and he would look like he's going to say something to you and go, how are you? Somebody else, he would tease us and make us really want him to talk to us. Then he said, how are you happy? He said to me. And I was like, oh my God, that's the game my father plays with me. And all I could say was, oh, I'm happy right now. And I'm happy that I'm here in your presence. Because that was the truth. I wasn't happy otherwise. So Srila Gurudeva was just showing me, I'm your father. I know you. Don't worry, I got you, Then I had to go do this job for my dad. So the whole time I was in this really beautiful, it was a hot springs place that my dad had put together in the Sierras. And I went there and it was a really quiet, peaceful place. And all I could do was just weep. I had just been with Gurudeva and all I could do was weep. And my dad probably just thought I was a zombie or something. And my daughter was really young, so she was playing around. But the whole time I was there, I was really digesting what had just happened in Badger, the connection I had. And I had one more chance to see Gurudeva. So I flew out of there. I must have drove 100 miles an hour all the way to Concord, where Gurudeva was speaking in this one place. And I was so freaked out because I was breaking the limit all the way, driving like a mad woman. And I kept looking at the clock and I was just later and later. Finally got there about, I think, 45 minutes into that program. And Gurudeva had just arrived. And so I had met him right in the foyer of the building. And I'm like, Gurudeva, I made it. Like, because I know he knew, he just knew things. And so then we were able to, and he was so affectionate at that moment, yes. And I'm like, I thought I was late, but I was exactly on time. I was like super far out, And so, yeah, for me, it was a powerful resurgence of attraction to Krishna consciousness and a huge step up on philosophical understanding, of course, like the rest of us, understanding that the Jeev, I used to ask that question to my teacher. How is it that we were with Krishna and we ever left? Like, how is that possible? And when it says in Shastra, a person never falls from Vaikuntha. And, he couldn't answer these. He goes, I know what you're going to ask. Don't worry about that right now. That was always his answer to stuff. Don't worry about it, because they voted on that stuff. They voted on that Siddhanta. So they already, and there were just so many red flags for me in that whole situation. And I'm a philosophical minded person. I really wanted to understand. I'm curious and I wanted to understand a lot of questions. Of course, Srila Gurudeva not only annihilated those questions like a sledgehammer on a fly, but created so many more that I'm too dumb to even ask. So I feel really nestled under the wing of Srila Gurudeva. I feel very fortunate. When I met him in the first Camp Pakusa again in Maui, I knew he was leaving. And just before he left, the day before he left, I was already crying and walking around bewildered. Like, what am I going to do? I have to go back to that temple. Like, my heart is split open. I felt in the middle of brain surgery. You don't just walk up and, so I was crying and walking around really bewildered. And then here comes Srila Gurudeva out there's a beautiful meadow in the middle. And then the beach was right over the little cliff. And I see Srila Gurudeva come out. Someone pulls out this red chair and puts Srila Gurudeva in the chair. And then there's nobody around him, like nobody. That's never seen. So then some devotee says, Gurudev wants to talk to you. And I'm like, what? So of course I ran over, fell on the ground, and he goes, I know you're sad because you think I'm leaving. Said, still, I think you should know, I will stay in your heart. I will be in your heart, and I will come and help you in your dreams. And I was like, oh my God. I don't know if anybody experienced this, but when we were around Srila Gurudev, we felt like this honey pot fill up to your neck of just light, sunshine, happy feeling. And it would stay there for a while after Gurudev left. And then sometimes devotees would, still be around, getting ready to leave places. So you would feel, okay, it's going to be okay. The separation doesn't have to be that hard. And then eventually, and then you see Gurudev again, and then that beautiful, warm, I can't describe it other than to feel like the sunshine would fill up to my neck when I was in his presence. And so after that darshan, oh man, I was just full to the brim. And I was like, I can't wait to meet this person again. I can't wait to just completely follow this person. And it would take me a couple of years to finally just pull away and just be with Srila Gurudev. And then he had never given me beads, and he had never given me a name. And I was Sevanandi for like 1 million years. So he used to call me Sevanandini, which I thought was funny, but it was, Sevanandini. And I thought maybe they got my name wrong. But now I realize he was affectionately calling me Sevanandini instead of Sevanandi. So I remember we were in Hilo, and Gurudev was in that little Hilo temple. And Vishnu and I, my daughter, were also, at the time she was Gaurvani, we were like, why don't we get a name? And why don't he chant on our beads? And we were just feeling like, we should have come sooner for this thing. And he always called my daughter, what her name was, Shama Gauri at the time. Anyway, so this was so trippy. We walk in, and Mangala and her young daughter, Radhika, are there already. And we pay obeisances. And then Srila Gurudev, just like this mystical director, he goes, oh, what is your name? And he knows it's Radhika, He's like, what is your name? And she was too shy, so she turned into a little sea urchin. And her mother goes, oh, you named her Radhika, Gurudev. He goes, what? Her name is Radhika. He's like, such a high name? Where did you get this name? And then she goes, you gave it to her, Gurudev. It was like this transcendental play right in front of us, He knew what we were there for. He was totally playing a game with us. Like, how he would just make you want something so bad. And then you like, give it to me, like create this incredible greed. So he did that to us that day. And so immediately, of course, we just started crying. We're like, Gurudev, you never gave us a name, and you didn't chant on our beads. And he's like, okay, give me your beads. So he took our beads and he chanted on them. And then he named my daughter Vishnu Priya. And he told her Vishnu Priya is a wife of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, also very dear to Vishnu, like this, different meanings of that name. And then he named me Shama Priya. He said, Sham Priya, dear to Sham. This is the name of Radhika. So I was like, oh my God, talk about my cup flowing over. It was just like an ecstasy. And then it wasn't until I walked away that I realized that was a total game he just played on me. He just did that because he knew that's why we were there. But he was always showing us this transcendental, amazing, just his vision and how he saw everything, how he was so far ahead of our game, we could never catch up, and just blow our minds with his different cities, which as a person who had an ISKCON guru, they don't have any cities. They aren't able to show you anything like that. And it's not like you're looking for it because you're supposed to be, adjusting your mind to what you have. And, but Srila Gurudev unabashedly showed you over and over, one city after another, so that you were like, I can have faith in this person. Somehow I know I can, and I don't question it at all. So I don't know if I'm out of time, but it's easy for me to run long. So
beautiful, Shama Priya.
Beautiful.
I kind of had a link. There's a kind of link between your story and what Malati was saying from Murumba, because she was saying how Gurudev taught her about the two words were lobe and prayojan.
Mm-hmm.
And you totally exhibited lobe, like you were clearly like a fish that was just like drying up on the land and flipping around for the last gasp, but you still had lobe even though there was no water there. And
well
so
said.
He really played a beautiful leela there for you. And I can only imagine. And I have a lot of us devotees who came straight to Srila Gurudev who didn't go either via Srila Prabhupada or via ISKCON. I feel like we owe a debt, almost like we're the Justafarians, where we're inheriting the wealth of the first generation created, so that we're, without you coming over from ISKCON to Gurudev, we would never necessarily have gotten the association we did with, not just with Gurudev, but with his nearest and dearest. And at the same time, Gurudev taught us how to see us all as being ISKCON at the same time. You know, he was. He taught us to be skeptical and to be awake, but not to be sectarian, which is really beautiful.
Exactly. That's always mood, actually. I first came to Krishna consciousness. I was going to Bhagavad Gita classes with my ISKCON guru. I was just coming forward. I was going way out of my way to do things. And so I had a natural greed because I was already on my hardcore search to find my path. I hit a rock bottom and I just knew God was personal and I needed to know that personal God. So when I was going to all these things, I started hearing from Srila Maharaj and my mind was blown. Like my mind was blown. So the first person I asked for Harinam was Srila Maharaj, but at that time he was just getting ready to leave. So I had connection with certain devotees and I always went to his temple. Even I would prefer that temple over our temple and I would get in trouble sometimes for going there. But I would also bring his books to my teacher and he also loved Srila Maharaj. He had a connection with Srila Maharaj, but it was more of a stamp of approval kind of connection, you know what I mean?
His books,
so I was also very open-minded. I felt like I missed the biggest quote in the world. I missed it for the Prabhupada. It used to devastate me. But Prabhupada appeared many times to me in dreams. It's like, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And I had so much darshan of Prabhupada that I knew, wow, this is real, this is far out. Prabhupada, Srila Maharaj. And then when we were in Santa Cruz still, just had my daughter, she's a couple years old, we got the opportunity to hear and serve Srila Gurudeva Maharaj. My sister was married to a devotee, and Markandeya. And so Gurudeva Maharaj went through San Jose and had like a 3-hour program in this house, and they didn't have a cook. So I made everything and brought it. And then I got to personally serve Gurudeva Maharaj. And Gurudeva Maharaj saw my husband, who was working really hard and pretty out of it. He was like, what's your name, Prabhu? And he's like, Chiranjib. He goes, Chiranjib Prabhu, you disciple of Prabhupada? He's like, yes. And he goes, you sit here. And we didn't know what that meant. That was the hot seat. We didn't know. I had done all this service and my husband was on the hot seat. So I think what happened was that whole experience we had, because, you know, Gurudeva is very feisty when talking about trying to relish this world. Yeah. What? Like, you are Mudha. You can't relish anything, Mudha. And then he go, isn't it, Chiranjib? Isn't it? So my husband is usually nodding off in class, was like freaked out right in the middle of it. And I have to say that catapulted us over to Maui and into the association of people who were actually doing Krishna consciousness. Like literally right after that. Did you say you had some direct association with Srila Rakshak Srila Maharaj? I didn't. I had written a letter and I got a correspondence back. Okay. I had done a lot of service at his temple. With Govinda Maharaj, yes. No, with Srila Maharaj. I really wanted. No, but you did get direct association with Govinda Maharaj. I did have direct association and got to feed. So you weren't on our program when we announced that we're doing a Guru Pranim 64-hour Zoomathon where we're celebrating 14 Nityalila Gurus, including Govinda Maharaj. So perhaps you'd like to honor him because he has. That'd be wonderful. Yeah, it'd be really great. Yes, send me a time for that. I'm down. Fantastic. Yes, so I just think that the Sadhu Sangha that Srila Gurudeva proved and showed us, and we didn't really realize it, but we read it everywhere in Shastra. Sadhu Sangha is everything. And so, oh, you're a sadhu, you're a sadhu. No, when we meet an actual sadhu, like Srila Gurudeva Maharaj, there's a radical effect that takes place. Yeah, and again, Srila Gurudeva, a radical effect takes place on your heart and your bhajan, and there's no question about it. Sadhu Sangha is everything. So. Before we close out, can I just make a comment on your muffin story? Yes. So, because I have mamata over that story because I've been telling it for years. And also, it was so funny meeting you this year. And for years, I thought it was an Indian woman in Vrindavan who brought it until someone kindly pointed out to me that Brij buses wouldn't make muffins, which is fairly obvious. They don't have ovens. No, but there are some really sweet aspects of that story. One is just
bring out the taste of the relationship between Madhav Maharaj and Gurudev, and how how Gurudev would sort of play this leela of being frightened of Madhav Maharaj, who would be very strict, which is so cute and so beautiful.
Beat him blatantly, though, at the same time.
So many stories like that. And the other thing also is I pushed that story out a bit by saying that Gurudev did to the muffin like he did to us. He didn't change anything necessarily on the outside. We were still the same body, but on the inside, our hearts have been totally transformed. So the muffin becomes like an allegory for our heart transformation. So that's my favorite story. In
the internal, so important.
And also, I actually forgot. I love how naughty Srila Gurudev always was, and I forgot to ask Malati what his Australian accent was like. Was he any good with his Australian accent? We can't hear you, my dear. We can't hear your Australian accent. You're on mute.
Okay. Okay, better? You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, it was perfect. Very good, very broad, very nasally, you know. Gurudev, that's what you call me, Gurudev, you know. So perfect. You know,
when I do an Australian accent, it kind of turns into something Irish. So no,
of course, Gurudev's was perfect.
So Syama, Priya, thank you. I'm glad you made it. I'm glad the timing worked out. That was really beautiful to hear that lobe, that intensity, that desire in your heart to continue in your bhakti, even though there was a lot of adversity. I can't imagine.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for allowing me to honor.